When I moved to America, everybody's a Christian. And you have no clue who knows God, who has experienced God, who has an encounter with God, and who never did that.
Welcome to Insights with Marcia. We're so glad to have you here today. And if you don't mind, drop us a like and subscribe to our channel. We have all kinds of fascinating guests, but today, most fascinating is Pastor Denis Kozlov. And he's a dear friend from Russia, of all places, and has an amazing story to tell. So, Pastor Denis, we're so glad to have you here today. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you so much, and I'm honored to be invited to your podcast.
Well, thank you for being here. When we talked beforehand about what to talk about, it's like anything that Denis has to say, I love, because he's full of energy. He's got the best stories in the world. And his stories, you guys, are the ones I never forget. They are of an amazing childhood, growing up in a time where he saw so much change in the world, and especially in Russia, and saw the change of Christ coming to Russia and all that. And he's just got a perspective that I think you've probably never heard before. And then we're going to talk about how you came to the United States, who you're ministering to now, who you're really blessing, because I know there's a lot of people that are glad you are where they are. So let's start out with your childhood. Tell us what was it like being a child in Russia or a teenager, and how you came to know Christ.
Well, I was born in 1974 in the country that doesn't exist anymore. It used to be known by the name of the Soviet Union. Right now it's multiple different countries. A lot of them are independent countries. I remember when I was growing up, when I was even before I went to school, there was so much propaganda in government-controlled media that I felt this almost religious bliss that, oh man, I'm so lucky, I'm so blessed to be born in the Soviet Union, because they constantly showed how horrible other countries are and how wonderful we are. And I kind of tended to believe that because I was a little kid. Later though, I the inner rebel woke up in me, and since they were showing America always in a very, very negative light, and it looked so different from what I was growing with, I really felt like, oh, there must be something real special and interesting about this country. It's so different. There must be, there was this attraction to exotic nature of this country that they showed. So later I became fascinated by the West, by the countries that I had no access to, by America. I remember I had a little quarter. Somebody got me a quarter when I was a little kid, American quarter. And it was from the outer space. It was like I was touching the world that I knew that I could never be part of, because Russian people were, controlled. They couldn't travel abroad. Only very few special people could travel abroad. If you would talk to a foreigner, you would get yourself into trouble. You might end up in jail for just talking to a foreigner. Everything was heavily, heavily controlled by the government, but I didn't know that at the time. I learned about those things later. Yeah, that's how it all started. I was very happy in my childhood. I lived in very poor conditions, but I had no clue. I had nothing to compare with. To give you a perspective, I grew up with a single mom. I'd never met my dad. We lived in a kind of a dormitory setting, and my mom and we shared one room, and there were multiple rooms like that, and in each room there was a family, and we shared a restroom, all of them. We shared a kitchen. There was only cold water. For most of my childhood, I didn't have a TV. We got our first TV. It was black and white, and they only had 3 channels, and they were all scrambly. And anyway, but I was happy. I didn't know any other. Yeah. So that was my childhood. So the childhood was in the Soviet Union. By the time I became a teenager, the country by the name of Soviet Union began to shake and crack and collapsed finally. And that was the time when I was a teenager and somebody introduced the gospel to me. So there were a lot of changes internally because I was transitioning from being a kid to becoming an adult, and the country was transitioning, nobody knew where. All of a sudden, this freedom came that nobody knew about, and the doors, the curtain, iron curtain, as they called it, was lifted off, and all of a sudden, we started being able to receive information from the rest of the world, and we got a lot of information. Some of it was really, really bad. All the Hollywood movies came in, all the bad things came in, but all the good things too. Because missionaries that have been praying for the country of Russia, for the country of Soviet Union, but couldn't come, they used to smuggle the Bibles, they used to smuggle the Christian books. Now they've been able to actually come in person and preach the gospel. And that's when the revival began to happen in Russia. In the early 90s, the country got open and missionaries came. All kind of missionaries from United States, from Korea, from Sweden, from Finland, and people started getting saved by thousands. Back then, you could come to any big city and just say, "Hey, come, we'll give you a free Bible." You would have hundreds and thousands of people gathering. So it was crazy. People were so hungry to hear about God, to get hold of the Bible, to get a New Testament. That was amazing time. Amazing time.
I think that's so cool that you're talking about hundreds and thousands just to get a Bible. And we just totally kind of discount that one thing that, if you walked around my house, there's probably lots of them, every
Yeah.
hotel room has got one. And it's like, how cool was that? So when did you get your first Bible?
It was interesting. When I became a Christian, and I'll tell you the details of how it happened. The first Bible they gave me was a New Testament. They just gave me a New Testament, and they said, "Well, read it 10 times or something like that, or 5 times before we'll give you the full version, like Old Testament and New Testament together." And I said, "Wait a second, there's a full version, and I don't have it." Of course, I just started reading it like crazy. So I read it before you knew it, just quickly ran through that. I didn't understand much, but here's the thing I noticed. Because the Bible was not introduced to me as a book with some useful information. No, they said this is the Word of God. God inspired that, so God can speak to you through this book, and God can actually speak to your spirit. And they said, I don't know how they presented it, but somehow I learned that there's almost this mystical experience if you slow down and if you open your heart and begin to interact with this text, something begin to transpire in you, and it goes deeper than your brain and your reasoning ability. It feeds your spirit. It strengthens you. It literally, I could compare it with eating a good meal. It strengthens you. It fills you with energy. And I realized, oh, it's doing that. That's an amazing book. Something interesting is happening to me when I interact with this book this way, because you can read it as like, oh, whatever, just some words on the paper. No, take it as a special book from God. You will hear God in that book. You'll begin to get in touch with something. I was experiencing that, and soon I got my first Russian Bible, full version of it, and I was super happy. I was reading it day and night. I fell in love with this book. I don't think I understood a lot, but I was feeding my spirit. And I was sowing those seeds, and later a lot of them are sprouted and began to bear fruit. So I love my Bible. There were times when I kissed my Bible. I went through a lot of Bibles. I remember several Bibles were stolen from me. I was so unhappy. A few Bibles I wore out because they were poor quality, and I was trained to study, to mark, to highlight, to write on the margins. I was doing all of that, so that was my treasure. And that's how I began to learn how to speak English, because English is not my native language. Nobody taught me how to speak English. I got this language from God. It was semi-miraculous thing. I can tell you about it if you want me to.
Oh, I'd love it. Go ahead. That sounds neat.
Yeah, that's how it started. When I became a Christian, there were not many churches yet. There were no Christian bookstores. There were no Christian literature. There were no Christian radio stations or anything like that. So the only people who give you good answers to your questions that you would have about the Bible were missionaries from other countries that came. And a lot of those missionaries didn't speak Russian. They use interpreters. So a lot of them spoke English. And I remember I was so hungry. So every time I had a chance to talk to one of the missionaries, to some of the missionaries, I would wear those interpreters out. They would start hating me. Like, this guy is full of questions. He makes us stay behind for too long. Like, he constantly bombards with questions. And at a certain point, I realized, you know what? These interpreters, there was a time when they didn't know English. They didn't know how to speak two languages. So I said, like, I I can do that too. Like, I want to be able to understand people speaking in another language and to be able to express myself. And and I remember specifically at that time, I think I was reading the Gospel of John. I think it's in the Gospel of John where it says, "On that day you will not ask the Father in my name. You will ask you will not ask me to ask the Father. You will ask directly the Father in my name, and you will receive what you ask, if it's in according to my will." That's the concept I got from the Bible. And I said, you know what? The Lord, I believe this is your will so that I can speak English on my own without any mediators. I can express myself and I can understand people. I'm asking you right now, give me the gift of the language, of English language. And I just felt like God heard me. And this is it. I went ahead and told my friend that, oh, I'm going to speak English. He said, right. He's been studying English for 5 years in university, and he was getting some traction, but not doing great. So he kind of, was very doubtful. I said, no, 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 you'll see. I'll speak English very well. Very next week, somebody gave me another Bible, now English Bible, and praise God, it wasn't King James. I don't mind King James, but King James is not the best to learn how to speak the language.
Right.
So they gave me a Bible. I believe it was a good news edition, a very simple English, very simple English. I think it's an edition written for people for whom English is not their native language, or maybe for kids. I don't know. But I grabbed onto that Bible and I began to study that Bible, and I began to write down the words, look up the dictionary. And to make a long story short, within 1 month, I've been able to understand a lot. And I had my first conversation with an English, I don't even remember who it was, but I remember I had a conversation for about an hour with person in English, no interpreters involved, and we could understand. The miracle transpired, happened just in front of my eyes. And the very first year, people were just shocked. They said, "You're a school dropout." Like, no, you can't do that. And in a couple of years, I became one of the very well-known interpreters in the city. I being invited to different conferences. I remember the time when I was invited to a conference, Christian conference, and there was a group of young people, about 300 people, maybe 200 people. I don't remember the details right now. And there were two speakers, and I was translating. And I was so afraid when I learned that I'm translating, and in front of me, all these 200 people, they're professional translators. They're learning to be professional translators in the university, in college, and some of them are already graduating. Some of them are like first year, second year students, and I was like, oh my goodness! And I was so afraid that they're gonna critique me and criticize me. And then they came to me during the first break and they said, "Where did you learn how to translate? You're doing a fabulous job." I'm like, "We're amazed how well you do that." And I was like, whew, relieved. So I knew I received my gift from God, my ability to speak and understand the language. I got it with bonus. I became pretty good translator, and that's how I was making my living. I was having my bills paid for a number of years doing translation work. And little did I know that in the future I will move to the States and I will become a preacher and teacher in America, speaking and preaching in English to English speaking people and having some good fruit there. So I didn't know that at the time. I was just following God and bringing the desires of my heart to Him, and the rest is the story today.
It's so I would say funny, but not funny at all. It's so fascinating how God will put something on our heart to be passionate about.
Yeah.
And if he does, he's going to follow through. He's going to help us get there. He's going to help us kind of like a lot of the theme of the podcast is finding your purpose. And the first thing I asked somebody was, what are you passionate about? And they're so like, that was perfect for you. And another thing, because I've lived on the earth longer than you, I probably could be your mom if I was a teenage mom. But anyhow, um, is that quarter, for instance. The
Oh, yeah.
little memory, the little things you don't even realize God is dropping into your life that you later go, oh, that was, like the clue game. That was the best. That was a really good clue. Now you were kind of going like that. Did you notice other clues?
Oh, yeah. Like even now, living in the States, living in America, I remember when I was a kid. Remember, I told you, like at a certain age, I began to be fascinated with America because they've been showing it on TV so much in a negative light. And I was like, oh man, that must be a really cool country, very interesting. And besides, it was out of reach because none of the Russian people were allowed to travel abroad. And like America is like, so I remember based on those pictures from TV, I was, uh, I was playing as a kid, like, oh, I'm in America. I imagine that there are skyscrapers around me. I was just playing and imagining things like I'm driving in America, I'm walking in America. I flipped the Russian signs into like English letters that I couldn't understand. I was just playing that I am in America. And years later, I remember I was landing in the city of New York. I was 20 some years old, first time ever. I was pinching myself because I couldn't believe that the dream of my childhood to ever visit the United States of America was happening. And it was impossible. And yet it was happening. Uh, and then I remember when I was invited to actually consider moving to the States. Oh my goodness. I was like, oh, is this really happening? I'm moving to the States. And then I remember when I was preaching my first sermons in English. I was so nervous, so afraid. And then I saw tears in people's eyes. I saw laughter. And then I began to see how I led people to the Lord. Come on, that cannot be, but it was. And it was planted in my heart when I was a little kid. I remember my mom had a friend and her friend's husband once looked at me when I was like 6 years old and I had this baseball hat and he looked at me, he said, "You look like an average American." I was 6 years old and I felt like super proud of that for some reason. Like, yeah, I do. I don't know why, but it was happening in the middle of my like very, very young years. I mean, when I was a little kid. So definitely God, looking back, there are three things that really inspire my faith in God. Looking at the history of Jewish people, uh, thinking about death and your expiration date, thinking about transitioning into eternity. And the third one, when you look back at your own life and you see the hand of God clearly, but at that moment you didn't know it was God. So he was always there, always there.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. And I think you just threw out the huge key to people. The mind doesn't think in words, it thinks in pictures. And you
Yes.
pictured yourself driving in America, doing everything in America. And, that's key in my life. Different things I've wanted to do, I've had to see myself there. You did it to the ultimate. I'm like, you have set the bar. But whatever people want to do and they're passionate about, I think you just gave such a great key. See yourself doing it. If you want to go to a certain school that you didn't think you could get into, you see yourself walking up the steps of the school, meeting your teachers, making friends, and that's powerful.
Yeah, it is. And so many Christians are afraid of things like that. They say, oh, it's visualization, it's new age, blah, blah, blah. But first of all, the world took a lot of things away from Christians. They robbed Christianity. Before there was a psychology, church fathers knew all the deep things about human soul, but they gave it away. Now it's shrinks that do that. Christian church gave it away. Visualization. I mean, a lot of people are scared of that. But listen, have you ever met an athlete who has any achievements in life that hasn't imagined first? Like, you will never meet such an athlete. So it's just not possible. God speaks in pictures. You're so right. He brings Abraham out of his tent and he says, look at the sand. Can you count it? No. That's how many children you're going to have. Look at the stars. Can you count it? No. That's how many you're going to see. Look at the lilies of the field. Look at the birds of the sky. Look at them. Look at them. Look at them. Now connect them to what God is about to do in your life. Yeah. So these are very good. These are very good. We need to relearn to dream with God, because God is a dreamer who brings his dreams to fruition. And we are created according to his image and likeness. It's important to make sure you're not self-seeking in your dreams, because that's not the kingdom. But when you gave your life to Jesus, he says, come on, dream now. Come on, I gave you 2 talents, make it 4. I gave you 5, make it 10. I gave you 10, make it 20. Don't bury them. Dream, move on, extend your boundaries, go for it.
Yes, you said it so well. It started out in the Bible and in Christianity. Certain other, like a New Age or something else, has used it, and so now we think it's wrong. But it's the way. I mean, if the mind thinks in pictures and not in words, hello, God is a dreamer. God, I'm going to have a friend that teaches about dreams in about a month, and I forget how much of the word, like a third of it or something crazy, is about dreams and angels. And we just don't even realize, like you said, and look at the stars. God gives us images to look on, and it makes all the difference in the world. We've got to have some picture in our mind. Why not have the positive ones? Yes.
Yes, we already use our imagination, but very often, if we don't sanctify it, if we don't bring it to God in our life, it becomes a tool of the enemy. Like, you immediately go to the negative scenarios. You develop this foreboding spirit. Even if something good happens, you're just waiting for the next how do you call it, like next shoe to drop, whatever the saying is. You are waiting. You're actively expecting negative things to happen to you, and you even imagine the scenarios. Why? Yeah. So we should. They say fear is the opposite of faith. I would say it's faith reversed. So the same thing with imagination. It can be given to the enemy. It can be given to our fears and anxieties, or it can be given to our heart of faith, so that God can grow something mighty and powerful in our life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this is a quick little sidebar. I know you and I have talked about the Enneagram before.
Yeah.
What number are you?
Oh, I have. So I remember the names for that, and I am enthusiast challenger. So challenger is number 8, but enthusiast, I don't remember which number it is, but I remember specifically enthusiast challenger. Yeah.
You're a 7 in a yes, I love it. And see, people like me, I'm a 6. And the 6 is like, what if, and I've got to have a contingency plan. So 6s have a lot of fear. And they say that half the world is 9s and 6s. Now, I don't know if that's true, because I don't hardly know another 6. But we have to fight fear. So I've really learned, like you said, I just had a negative thought in my mind. What am I going to picture positive? If I picture something bad happening to one of the children, now I'm going to picture something awesome happening to one of the children. Don't be a negative person. But our culture, negative. And you and I right now are in media. And I love Johnny Enlow's teaching around media, because he's like, media's job is to show people that God has a good plan for their life.
Amen. These are modern days prophets, and some of them are false prophets with negative news, and some of them are good news prophets. And our God is a God of a good news. Our God is always a God of restoration. Our God is always a God of hope. Our God is not a God of despair. Our God is not a God of just giving all hope. No, he restores. He reaches out. And I constantly taught my people in different churches that I pastored that if you see something scary in the Bible, yes, some of the passages are there to stir up fear in you, but not so that you would sink into that fear and die, but so that you would change and be restored. So God is always into shepherding and restoring people.
Yes. You and I could talk for hours. I just love it. Okay, now I want you to take people back to Russia, and you're turned on for God, and You don't have the Christian TV shows, the radio, all that stuff, the Christian bookstores. Your Christianity is nothing more than God's Bible. And when you saw things start to change, what was making it change, and how did you get back on course? Because that's an amazing story, in my opinion.
Okay, so by the age of maybe 16 years old, when I was 16 years old, unfortunately, I told you my mom, I was raised by a single mom, never met my dad, and I was just, I dropped the school. I was hanging out with the guys of about the same age, guys and girls, and we experienced a lot of those kids also were raised by single moms. No, dads were not involved in their lives, and we were just hanging out on the streets, running into all kinds of trouble. It wasn't, I wouldn't call it a gang, but it was kind of some of them became a gang later. So we were kind of the street smart kids, and we were hanging out in this train station. It was beautiful historic building. And one day a lady came to us and she started talking to us about God. And I'll tell you honestly, we were not impressed. We laughed at her, we ridiculed her, we mocked her, we taunted her. We didn't care. We just ha ha ha, God, ha ha ha, whatever. She continued and she said, next week I'm gonna come and get you guys and bring you to our gathering. We have a gathering in someone's apartment. It's like a prayer group or something. We had no clue what she's talking about. So by the next week, we were dispersed from there. Like the police, one of us broke the window there or did something stupid, and the police kicked us out and they said, if we see you here once again, you're gonna get into trouble. So they kicked us out. We didn't have a place to hang out. I was just passing through this place, and all of a sudden I bump into this lady, and she comes to me and she talks to me. So where's the rest of you guys? I said, like, who are you? I said, I talked to you last week. I talked to you about God. Oh, yeah, right. Said, so do you still want to go with me to this little group of believers? I said, well, sure. I have nothing to do. Yeah, let's go check it out. So I went. While we were waiting for the bus, few more joined. God was gathering us. So long story short, next week and the week after that, a group of young people began to gather at that place because we didn't have any place to go. We started hanging out there. They would serve us tea, cookies. They would feed us. They would let us take a smoke break every 30 minutes or so. We got it good. So we had a place to hang out till springtime comes. And the only troublesome part was they kept talking about Jesus and God. We didn't like that. Yeah. But anyway, they were marinating us in this kind of environment for a while. And then maybe a month or two later, we got together and they said, guys, we prayed for you today, and we felt like God told us something. God told us that you heard enough about Jesus and about God, so that today you need to make your mind about God. You need to say yes to Jesus or no to him. And man, this was the interesting moment, because all the time until that moment, we didn't take them seriously. But all of a sudden, I just realized, oh, wait a second, something super serious is taking place right now. Somehow, I had an immediate realization that it's like a fork in the roads. Like how I respond to this invitation would determine the way of my life goes. I just knew it in a split second somehow. It was like an insight. And that was hard. They said, those who want to say yes to Jesus, stand up on your feet. We were all sitting around the room. And I remember this one thought running through my head, like, shall I stand up or not? Shall I stand up or not? I really want to stand up, but what will the rest of the gang think of me? Peer pressure. And all of a sudden I realized I'm standing. And I was horrified because I thought, what if I'm the only one? And I look around and all of them are standing and all of them have this puzzled look on their face. And that, of course, I had a feeling of relief. Oh, okay, I'm not alone. All of them said. So we prayed. We received Jesus that day. Then later we got baptized. And that's how our walk with God began. And man, oh man, it began. I began to experience God becoming real in my life. I would learn how to pray, and I would talk to him, and all of a sudden I would feel like, oh, I would feel his presence. Nobody explained to me what his presence is like. I just like, oh wow. I remember we were talking in that room, and most of the people were gone. Very few stayed behind. And we were sitting, I remember specifically, we were talking about Jesus. We were talking about Jesus. We were talking about him. And all of a sudden, everybody shut up. They just stopped talking because everybody felt, oh, the one we talk about all this time, he's here. And we just like, whoa. And we just sat there in quiet for like, I don't know, it felt like eternity because we didn't want to move. We didn't want to move. The one that we were talking about visited us. I don't know how to explain that. I don't know even if it's proper and correct theology, but that's experience. That was so tangible. And for me, that was the beginning of like, God is someone to experience. He's not just someone to talk about. He's not just someone to theorize, like to make theories about. He is to be experienced in the unique fabric of your life circumstances. And that's what Christianity, Christian faith for me was from the very beginning. That's one of the biggest things that was there.
Wow. Wow. That's cool. That's cool. Have you kept up with any of the people from that group?
Yes. Unfortunately, the lady who arranged this whole thing and opened her house for us kids, and we were scary looking. I had like Mohawk and I had like black leather jacket, all in like metal spikes and chains. I tried to look cool, of course. So all of those ladies were they used to be part of the underground, like Pentecostal church or something. So they were not used to interacting with people that were so different from what they're used to. Yeah, I kept in touch with some of them. Some of them drifted away from the Christian faith, unfortunately. This lady, she went to be with the Lord a few years ago. I was here in America when I learned the news, and I'm so grateful for her. Even today, that's how I encourage myself. When I see someone like a young person that I feel like a little nudge to talk about, maybe to see how open they are to talk about God, of course, naturally, I don't want to do that because I don't want to be rejected. I don't want to be disliked. I don't want to be told, mind your own business. But at the same time, I think, what if she wouldn't approach us back then? What if she wouldn't dare to come to those troublesome kids and start this conversation? She did. Yeah, she did. And I'm so happy. Decades later, I preach the gospel. I love the Lord. I have a wonderful family. I have great kids. I mean, come on. I could have been in jail because a lot of people that didn't experience that come from the same neighborhood, they're already dead. Like a lot of people from my class already dead. And I'm a legend. People watch me on social media, people from my neighborhood, people from my childhood, and they couldn't believe, like, who is this guy? How in the world did he pull it all off? How in the world he travels the world? How in the world does he speak English? How in the world he has so much influence? Like, I don't know. God, that's the answer. Jesus is the answer. And somebody came to me and dared to cross this chicken line to talk to me about God. Yeah, so we got to learn to cross the chicken line all the time. Come on.
I forgot. I think it was you that taught me the term the chicken line.
Well,
Yes.
that was introduced recently by my colleague, a pastor that I served together with. He developed this phrase, chicken line. We actually produce T-shirts. There's a chicken and it says "cross the chicken line," and we used it as an evangelism tool because you would wear this T-shirt and somebody would ask you like, "What does it mean?" And that's your chance to tell them about Jesus. Like, "Oh, thank you. I'm about to show you what it means. I'm going to cross the chicken line and tell you about Jesus." So yeah. Anyway, it's fun. Life with God is fun. And that's another thing I learned. The next thing I learned, not only he is tangibly present in your life, I realized his presence can can increase and become tangible not only for you but for others if you begin to speak about him to other people. You just begin, you get it, you start, and you see that in a few moments he gives you supernatural wisdom to say things that you didn't see are I mean, God gives you wisdom to speak into people's hearts, and that's what I learned. I would. My very first church was about 2 hours away from where I lived, so I had to walk to the train station, get on the train, ride a train for 40 minutes, then get into the subway for another 30 minutes, then walk a lot, and all this time I would carry my Bible, and the Bible had a little cross on it. So I would sit on my local train and I would open the Bible, and I realized back then the Bible was hard to find. So people would pay attention. Oh, this young kid is reading the Bible? And they would ask me questions like, "Oh, young man, are you reading the Bible?" I said, "Yeah." Why? And that was my chance to cross the chicken line. And I would start telling them. And within minutes, I would start talking to them. And I would see, I led some people to the Lord right there on the train. Like they would get as unbelievers, non-Christians on this train. And 40 minutes later, they would get off the train as believers. And I saw people like, I was a kid. I was 16 years old. And I was tell them about Jesus. And God would use me to speak into their life. And I would see people who back then looked very old to me, like 50s, 60s, and they would start crying. And I thought I had a temptation to think, oh man, I must be so special. Like I'm getting the keys to the heart. But it was God speaking to them through me. So come on, there's so much reality of God if we dare to take the first step, take a risk, take this walk of faith, and expecting God to show up. He shows up. Yeah, so that was amazing. That was wonderful. So the first few years of my Christian walk, I was floating over the ground, full of joy, hope, and this experience of God's presence and increased God's presence when you begin to speak about God. It was all there. It was amazing. My English that I obtained from God by faith, and yeah, cool stuff.
So I know there are some people who get burned out with traditional church. I, for probably almost a couple of decades, went to a home church, and I loved it. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you can see religion creeping in and how to keep it God and not the man-made part of church?
I can try to talk about it, but I'm still in the process of understanding this all, because we get the good news in a package, and it takes a lifetime to unravel this whole thing. Like my joy of receiving the Lord, experiencing Him, was very genuine. But at the same time, I remember the first thing I did, I joined the church, and I would listen to everything that is presented, and I would take it all as pure truth, because I was a young Christian. I didn't know anything different. So I would absorb and take it all at the same level. But experience and walk with God teaches you things that no one can teach you. No preacher, no teacher can teach you. You really need to. It reminds me of the story of Jacob, when he was a conniving manipulator together with his mom, right? And they were conniving and manipulating, and as a result, he was a refugee now, and he was flying. He was fleeing for his life, and in the middle of his dream, God met him, and He said, "Hey, listen, I am the God of your fathers, but now I am talking to you." And I believe that's what every Christian needs to experience. That's another thing that is so different in America. When I was in Russia, if somebody becomes a Christian, it's a legit case. Most likely, it's a genuine brother and sister. When I moved to America and I lived in Midwest, everybody is a Christian. Everybody is a Christian. And you have no clue who knows God, who has experienced God, who has an encounter with God, and who never did that. But I believe God's desire is, of course, Christian influence is wonderful. It's great when people grow up with Christian values. But if a person learned his or her Christian values from their mom and dad, but never met the God of their mom and dad, that's not good. And that's where religion begins. Religion begins when you talk a lot about God, but you never interact with Him. You never interact, you never encounter Him, you never hear Him talk to you, you never trust Him with specific things in your life, and you never see His hand manifested in your life. You are guessing about God. You're connecting the verses from the Bible. You talk about God, but you never say, "Okay, God, I got you. I understand now. Okay, I'm not going to do what I was going to do because you told me not to. Instead, you told me to do this," which I didn't see coming, but I trust that it does make sense in my mind, but I trust you. You told me to do this. I'm going to try to do this. You back it up, God, and you go for it. And then you see the hand of God and you say, oh my goodness, life can work like that? I didn't know that. Thank you, God. You're my God now. You're not God of my grandmother anymore. You're not God of my grandfather anymore or my parents. You're my God. You're God of Dennis. And now you pray for your kids to have their God, to enter into their personal relationship with God, face to face, heart to heart. Yeah. So
Yeah, I think what I heard you just say, which is it's clicking, is once you have to experience him. He's not just
yes.
somebody you know about and you can tell the stories. You have to experience him. And I feel like to experience him, you have to take a few leaps of faith. You have to give him a problem every now and then that you want to hold on to, but you have to give it to him and see what he'll do with it, and just on and on and on. There's so many ways to experience him. And I think if somebody asks for that experience, God's gonna give it to you. He's
Yeah,
gonna
absolutely.
he's
Yeah.
he's gonna teach you how to walk with him and how to experience him. Totally different than just check off the list. I went to church at 10 o'clock on Sunday. I'm good for another week. It's an experience like none other. It's like it's why you're so happy. You've truly experienced him. So, what happens when you get to America? Coming to America, what all is it like when you get here? What brought you here? I mean, like, do you have to get special visas, or what door opened up? And
Oh yeah, yeah. My first trips to the States. My first trip was in 1999. So that's what 27 years ago, and that was the trip that I thought went beyond my wildest childhood dreams. And I thought this is the only time I'll probably be able to experience America. So I borrowed a camera from a friend of mine, and I bought back then there were no digital cameras, so I bought tons of rolls of film. And I took like 20 some rolls of film. I kid you not, I was taking a picture of everything. I was taking a picture of a squirrel, of a water hydrant, of a school bus, because I wanted to capture America and like reminiscing later looking at those pictures. Little did I know that no, that was part of God's plan. It's not going to be the only trip. So I went again and again and again. First, as an interpreter, I was accompanying groups of pastors, visiting different states, different churches, helping them to communicate, translating for them. Uh, then they invited me to come on my own and start speaking at churches, doing the same kind of thing, but just on my own. And I started doing that. And that's when I began to get an experience of preaching and teaching and presenting things in English. And they began to see fruit. And they said, hey, Dennis, a few years later, they said, we would like you to move. And I was helping different mission organizations. And one of them was based in Springfield, Ohio, out of all the places. And then they invited me to move with my family. I asked my wife, I said, honey, I got an offer. They invited me to move to the States. Would you mind trying that with me? Because that was my childhood dream. And she said, well, we're still young. Let's give it a try, because we would regret later if we don't try. We can always come back if we want to, but we would regret if we just let it go. And I'm so grateful for my wife. She is such a support to me. So we went, and right before we went, and I'm skipping this part of my life story. I told you that in the very beginning, I was full of joy and excitement about my Christian faith. But over the years, I noticed that the more refined Christian I become, the more uh, the more I learn about all the church culture and all the unspoken rules and all the expectations, and I do them all right, and I become more and more efficient in the churchianity, the less this initial joy I had. And I couldn't figure this out. And I was trying to figure it out, and people would try to put me on a guilt trip saying, hey, you lost your first love, you got to repent. And I tried to repent and fast and do and this and that. It wasn't working. It was still happening. My joy and my hope was diminishing, and my skepticism and my even cynicism was increasing. And I didn't know what to do with this. And later I learned, I'm going to make it very short. I became a Christian in 1992. For the first about maybe 5 years, I was super happy. I was preaching the gospel. I was like, wow, Jesus, you're so amazing. By the year of 2008, I was cynical. I didn't believe people anymore. I still believed there's God, but even then, I thought maybe it's all psychosomatic. Maybe, I don't know. I became very smart in my head. I got a college degree, 2 of them, and but my faith was diminishing, and I didn't know what was happening. And I also see a lot of underbellies of different ministries that people don't get to see. But as an interpreter, I would translate all kinds of nasty conversations, all kinds of like financial uncleanness and all kinds of things. So it didn't contribute to my faith, But around the year of 2008, I was actively looking for the way out of Christian ministry because I was skeptical and I was cynical and I didn't want to be part of that. I thought, God, give me a good secular job that has nothing to do with ministry world. I've had enough of this ministry thing. I don't want it. God didn't let it happen. Instead, He brought me back, and I'm so happy, to rediscover the power of the gospel, to rediscover the Christ-centered lifestyle that deems everything as secondary compared to Jesus and his beauty, and Jesus as the ultimate revelation of who God is. Jesus is not just one of the prophets. Jesus is God himself. Jesus is the heart of God put on display, knowing fully that this heart will be attacked, it will be torn apart, it will be destroyed, and yet in this very act of self-giving, to this act of destruction, he's saying, here's what I am, here's who I am. I am dying for you so that you could be brought back into the eternal relationship of love that always existed, never began, and will never end. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We want you in the middle of this relationship. That's why we created you for. That's why we're redeeming you for. That's why I'm dying for you. That's who my God is. And then that blew my mind. That was around 2013, right before I moved to America. I rediscovered the gospel of God's grace, gospel of God's love, the gospel of God's heart. Oh my goodness. God is not a schizophrenic God who constantly changes his mind about you. He loves you with eternal love. He loves you with the love that he always had within himself. He is this love. Everything else is secondary, and he yearns for you to experience this love. Oh my goodness. That set me on fire again. All of my skepticism died, and I was getting ready to preach this gospel again when I moved to America. When I moved to America, I realized churches don't know this gospel. Churches go through their motions and their routines and their programs. And I was suffocated. I was suffocated. And so there's a lot of, as we call it, churchianity without Christ in the center. Some of them do it not because they're evil or anything, because that's how they were taught. They were taught like, oh, Jesus is for sinners. Those people on drugs, those people covered with tattoos, those people who sleep promiscuously, they need to hear about Jesus. But as soon as you get into the church, roll up your sleeves and work for God and clean yourself up. And they drift away. They graduate from the gospel. And they end up in religion. And religion kills you. Religion has a lot of talks about God, but it deprives you of experiencing the very heart of God's gospel, the sonship, the relationship, that unconditional love as the basis of relationship. You're forgiven not because you deserve forgiveness. You're forgiven because God is a forgiving God. You're loved not because you're lovable. You're lovable because loving God created you for his love. Anyway, I can go on and on and on. I can be like a broken record, but that's what brought me back. And I'm loving it right now. So right now, I'm here to preach the gospel to Christian, to non-Christian, to religious, to non-religious. And the church that I'm planting right now in the state of Florida we decided to call it Homecoming. Because, and it's based on chapter 15 of the Gospel of Luke. You know, when the religious folks were not happy that Jesus accepts and receives non-religious folks that were considered to be far away from God. And he gives them 3 proverbs about the lost coin, about the lost sheep, and about the lost brothers. And I call it brothers, not a brother, not a prodigal son. Both sons are lost. And the essence of the lostness is they do not know, they're oblivious about the heart of their father for them. They had a different image of God drawn by the enemy that repelled them from this God. And that's what religion does. It draws a picture of God that you will never, ever be able to be in love with. It's not reality. The reality is the father that the young kid experienced when he came to the end of himself and decided to maybe manipulate his father into receiving him and giving him 3 meals a day and a little roof over his head. But the father ran towards him and he hugged him, and he didn't let him carry out his plan. He said, no, 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 son, you don't understand. You were dead and now you're alive. You're alive because I'm hugging you. I'm your life, and you are now alive. You're with me. You were lost and now you're found. And you know what? We're going to celebrate. We're going to celebrate right now. I'm not going to give you a list of things that you need to correct. I'm going to celebrate your return to me, homecoming. And that's what I'm here to witness and to help and to facilitate a homecoming for everybody. I'm sorry for talking too much.
Oh, no, I love to hear you talk. I love it.
I'm a preacher, I'm a preacher. So you trigger a preacher in me, and you can just relax and just. But I want to be able to answer your questions if you have any.
When I thought about this interview, I kind of had that knowing it's going to go fine. Dennis will always have wonderful things to share. So I'm wondering, what one or two things in particular are you doing with your homecoming church and previously in Ohio to try to keep it grounded on God and not getting to routine? So can you think, in case there's somebody that's helping run a church listening to this, what can they think about to help them stay on track?
Well, first of all, keep Jesus at the center always. Don't make your church, don't make your programs the hero of the story. May your narrative always be about Jesus. Second thing, treat Jesus not a historic figure from the past that you have to prove people that he was a historic figure. No, live, breathe the reality of him now, present now. Act like he died last week and rose again from the dead last week in the neighboring town. Don't act like it's been 1,000 years and it's been far away and who knows what language they spoke and who knows what. No, it has to do with people living today, and his spirit is ready. The Spirit of God wants to glorify Jesus. So as soon as you get excited about Jesus, you make him the center of your life, you make him the center of your ministry, God is going to manifest. I had a very powerful vision experience. Can I share it with you? Yeah. It was in 2013, and I was part of the prayer group, and we prayed, and the visions were a new thing for me back then. I was like just learning I was opening myself up to praying and seeing some pictures and visions and something from God. Again, because I see it in the Bible. So I was praying, and all of a sudden, I just see this glimpse of a vision, and it was 3D, it was in color, and I saw one kind of a boat, a ship, and it was like a Roman, I don't know the official name of this, like Ben-Hur movie, those slaves were, rowing the oars, working on the oars. So that was this ship, and it was moving, and there were people sitting there, and they didn't have any clothes on the top of their torso, so they were moving. There was not the skin is bronze under the sun, like, the suntan, and they were moving in unison, and they were working their muscles, and that thing was just going through the waves. And that was over. And then all of a sudden, I got a second vision, and it's a different type of boat. It's a boat that reminds me of Columbus' boat, like kind of broad, like, I don't know how to describe that, but it had a white sails, the set of sails, and the biggest sail right in the middle of that was like as bright as a freshly fallen snow in a sunny day. It was like you had a hard time looking at it. It was so white, so shiny white, and there was a big red cross in the middle of that, and it was filled with the wind, and it was moving. And there were people there on that boat, but they were not working. They were there. They were holding onto the rails. They were moving. And in that vision, I tried to remove my focus from the sail and to refocus on the people, to understand what's going on, who is the captain there. And I couldn't. Your gaze is fixated on the sail. And it was over. And then I kind of like, we got together. I said, guys, I was praying. I saw this vision, and they were experienced people who understood the visions, and they said, oh, that's easy. That's two kinds of ministries, two kinds of lifestyles that Christians have, two kinds of churches. One is based on coordination, coordinated effort, planning, muscle effort, human effort, fleshly effort, carnal. And they do things by their own strength, and they say this is what God is doing. But it's them. There's zero God in that thing. And another one was the declaration of the righteousness of God, this white sail. God's righteousness applied to us through the finished work of the cross, through the finished work of Jesus. And the Spirit of God fills that sail, and it's moved by the power, by the strength of the Spirit. And I said, thank you, Lord. I want to be part of this second kind of ministry. I want to have Christian lifestyle that is Jesus-centered. And that's what I'm trying to do. But again, I have both in me. I have the old world of effort and planning and coordination. And there's a place for effort. There's a place for planning. There's a place. But we should never replace what takes faith to experience by our effort and our genius as strategists and planners and whatever. Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Totally.
Yeah. So I'm still learning to build a church that would be the second kind of church, to be part of the ministry that would be kind of a second part of ministry. And every once in a while I find myself doing this again, like those slaves on this Roman boat. And I say, whoa, how did I end up here? I need to get out of here. That's not what the Lord is doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll have to tell everybody, you've started a church in Florida, and already somebody has provided a wonderful meeting place. It holds over 100 people.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Go ahead if you
want me to elaborate on that? Yeah. So I moved here when my wife and I, we decided that we feel like God is calling us to move to another state. I never thought I'm going to live in Florida. So we sold our house in Ohio. We moved here, and I know nobody here. My neighbor shows up and he brings cookies and he says like, "Oh, we noticed you just moved into this house. We rented a house." He said, "I just want to welcome you into community, blah, blah, blah." I told him like, we don't know anybody here. 2 months later, he sees this whole neighborhood block is covered with cars and everybody comes to my house. I don't know what he thinks of me right now. I need to talk to him. But I just threw this little post on my Facebook. I said, "Oh, there's a new church coming to our city. If you're interested, come and check us out." But a little caveat, I came thinking that I'm starting an English-speaking church. And I came here and I discovered tons of Russian-speaking people, Ukrainians, Russians, people from Belarus, and they were longing to receive what I preach. And I was fighting that. I thought, Lord, it doesn't make sense. These are minorities. I don't want to invest myself into something that doesn't have much future. I want to work with majority of people who speak English. And I was not getting any traction until I gave up and said, Lord, I see, okay, you're the Lord, I'm not. You decide. I'm not the one who decides. And okay, all right, I gave up. Okay, I'm ready to serve Russian-speaking people. And that day, I mean, I through this invitation, we got about 40 people crammed into our living room. And then very next week, there was a core of people saying, yeah, we want to start the church with you. And the same very week, a gentleman I talked to said, I have a building place. I have a meeting place I can let you use for a while, even free of charge. And before I know it, now we have a congregation that we just started meeting on Sundays, last Sunday, and we're going to have an official opening. But at the same time, I said, Lord, where are my English-speaking people? You gave me English. You sent me to America. I don't want to live here like in a little bubble that speaks only Russian. I said, let me lead somebody to the Lord. And last week, I led the young fellow to Christ, and he said, "I want to be baptized. I want to read my Bible." He was glowing after this prayer, and I said, "Lord, this is it. Thank you so much, and thank you that you allowed me." Like those ladies, when I was 16-year-old, they called us to their place and they gave us cookies and tea. I bought pizza for this guy. He was hungry after work. I was like, "Hey, let's have pizza together," and I believe it's just the beginning. So. In a couple of weeks, I start English-speaking Bible study in my house. So hopefully that thing will grow too. So hopefully next time I talk to you on the phone, we'll have 2 meetings. We'll have 2 congregations, Russian speaking, English speaking. I have no clue how to interact with both of them together. I have no clue. It's uncharted territory, but it's sure exciting journey.
It is. I'm sure God's got it all mapped out. You just got to hang in there and let us see what it is. How exciting. Yeah. That's great. Well, I can't thank you enough for being on today. I'm sure you're going to have to come back because people are going to want to know more of how things are progressing. And I want to get from you later. We'll put it in the show notes, how people can give to your church if they want to help it get started. And or if anybody even wants to get your church newsletter, I get it even though I'm in Texas, and it just kind of melts my heart to see what all's going on and how fast it's moving. I mean, it is. It's growing quickly.
Yes. And I didn't see that coming. I thought we're going to take months to get established, to like start building this network, a lot of groundwork, and things started getting traction so fast. I'm still catching my breath.
And that's when you know you're in the right place at the right time.
Yes. And crossing the chicken line. Don't worry. Gotta be with you.
Yes. I'm going to have to get one of those shirts someday. Yeah, because sometimes I'm a little like,
yeah.
Chicken of the chicken line. But yes. So thank you for being here. Will you come back sometime?
Absolutely, Marcia. You melted my heart when I met you in Texas, because we were part of the group, and I told you before we started this recording that I noticed in you something, that you have this side of God's heart that not very many people have, because it's our natural tendency to be absorbed by our own little world and by our own set of problems. And you seem to carry the heart of God for other people. You really have this shepherding side to your heart. And God needs people like you. God needs people like you. So you're a true shepherd. You carry his shepherding heart. This care for people. I can see that in you. So thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you. And thank you for being on, because it's people like you that are helping me minister to other people. It's like, I just want to, it's funny because Jeremiah, my production genius, will look at what podcasts people are watching and why, and we're trying to figure out just what do we do to meet people's needs? What's going to bless them? What's going to be what they need to hear? And I think that's why I'm sticking with passion and purpose a lot, because I think, I'm recreating myself now. God told me to sell my business in 2019, and it's like, I feel like a teenager again,
Yes. You know what? You got it. God smells like childhood. God doesn't smell like old people. He smells like childhood. And although our external body, human, shape and, shell is falling apart, inside there's a renewal going on. This life cannot be corruptible that God planted inside of us. So it's like, oh man, you hit on something that I love. It's freshness, it's newness of life. That's what part of our inheritance as a Christians.
Yes. Well, I was a labor and delivery nurse for years, so I've been trying to keep better track of my dreams. And lately I've been working labor and delivery and I'm like, okay, you're birthing something new. Yeah. So it's so fun. And I think everybody still, even if they're doing their passion, they're kind of like, what's my purpose? What more can I do? And I'm like you, life's exciting. We've got to figure out how to keep it stoked. So,
and if you're with God, you cannot lose. Even the world considers something as a loss. It's not a loss. You cannot lose. You just cannot lose. They can't make you lose. You can physically be put to death. You're still not losing. You cannot lose with God. Yeah, if you're ever in Florida near Northport or Sarasota or Venice, I'm around this area. So yeah, you can probably put my email address in the show notes. You can shoot me an email. I'll be more than happy to answer and see you if you want me to talk to me.
Awesome, because I'm in North Florida, so I was already pulling out my map. How far are you from me? But you're kind of far, but that's okay. And you know what? You and I are going to come right back after we close off this show, and we're going to do another little teaser with a story or two for the people that want to tune in Friday after they see this podcast. So there's more of Pastor Denis to come. But thank you for being here. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you so much.